Starting this talk. Alright, so the talk is me with iOS on Fastlane. It's a experience report on what it meant to work with Fastlane while on an iOS project. So about me, I'm a lead technical developer at Tarka Labs along with Raja and Naren. So what we do is we build applications for across all languages. So I have worked with multiple different languages like Ruby, Rails, JavaScript, Go, Python, all that. So I started working on iOS like a year back, and thing was coming from backend languages, I found working with iOS hectic because I did not initially get to work on the command line at all. So moving on, things to consider about the app which we are building at Tarka Labs is it's an enterprise app, not deployed on App Store. Well, that's not true anymore, but at least that was the case a year back. Two devs cranking out the code for iOS, different URLs and configuration for different purposes. Dev staging production, talks to a SOAP API. It was a fairly complicated app with offline access and sync when update mechanism. Like a person can make changes offline, and then those changes would get synced when the internet connection comes back up. So it's backed by core data. So where did we begin? It's a fairly manual. What we had was a fairly manual build and archive process involving Xcode. Approximately 30 minutes of work just to get a built IPA onto the hands of our testers. Like every day, if we had to release, was not possible. We had to spend like 30 minutes just to create the IPA and give it to the testers because of various reasons. Few test cases either didn't run or were just misconfigured, and we had Swift 2.3. So where did we want to get to? We wanted the testers to be able to test the code every day. Whatever we are working on, we make those commits, and they should have the app available to them. Developers be able to quickly build and publish an IPA across the channels, whether if it's onto Crashlytics, if it's onto our website, we host IPAs, and if we had to push to App Store. So also we wanted the stable code base with good test coverage, minimum setup required for new developers when they join in. So that's a goal. I'll talk about what we finally did achieve, but let's talk about the journey. So starting with Fastlane. So what is Fastlane, right? If you go to the site, it talks about that, hey, it's a app automation done right. But what does it mean? CI/CD is one thing. So continuous integration and continuous deployment is important to almost all of us as developers. We want people to actually use our code, to play with it and give us feedback, right? CI/CD practices actually make it easier. So that's where Fastlane comes in. So it has a lot of features. It does a lot of stuff for you. It automates a lot of stuff for you only if you use it right. So what we did. So this is our Fastlane configuration. Basically, we have a Fastlane folder in our app, and that's what contains everything basically. So let me just run tests in the background while I'm doing this. So let those test cases run. Yeah, I'm running my test cases from the command line. It will do that. In the meanwhile, I'll go through what all of these files need and what all Fastlane can do for you. So is there a loose connection or something?
Yeah, it's a loose connection. It's not there.
Probably just disconnect and connect.
Okay. Better not to shake it.
I'll try. Okay, so we are back in the business. Right. So before going deep into fastlane, so fastlane is written completely in Ruby. It's basically like writing a rake tasks. Everything is defined within a fast file. You have configuration files called app file, fast file, gem file, plugin file, scan file. So all these are just configurations. It defines tasks for you. So basically, fastlane can be applied both for Android and iOS. So I'm defining that, hey, I'm working with the platform iOS. Probably I'll go to the yeah. So I have the fast file on the fast file open here. So it's a Ruby file. Complete syntax is Ruby. You can write any Ruby code over here, and it would work. It would compile. The thing is, with fastlane, you describe lanes which you execute from the command line. So we have various lanes defined already in fastlane with called iOS install, iOS update depths, iOS test, iOS bump patch, minor, major. The main one I would concentrate on is iOS beta and iOS test. So these are the two. So the test is what is running right now. So as the name says, it's to run the test cases. So before that, I'll come to Jim. So Jim, sure, come. Hi. So I just got started. So you're not missing much. So Fastlane has a tool called Gem. It's for building your IPAs and doing the code signing and all that. I'll open up the Gem configuration, Gem file configuration. So if you happen to look at it, it's extremely simple. We are defining which scheme which we are using inside our to build the app. The output directory where the IPs would be generated, the export options, and the method of signing. So it's going to use the enterprise signing, code signing option. I'm still waiting on the test to finish. Yeah, tests take a long time to run. So what we have done here So we have the build option, which in turn uses Gem. We pass in configurations, what we need to Gem. Of course, all this is specific to our use case. You don't have to make Gem as complicated as what you have over here. You can pretty much make it very simple, very simplified using Gem file itself and configuration. So with Fastlane, all the tools can be configured using three ways. One is you configure the tool within the fast file. You configure the tool with the respective files like gem file, scan file, plugin file, and all that. Or you pass in environment variables. Also, you can do command line arguments. I won't cover that much. So scan file looks like this. So currently the test which is running, I'm saying, hey, this is my scheme, this is my device, skip build true. I don't actually want to build IPA in this case, and clean. So always, whenever you're running test, do a clean build. Just going over the configuration or the steps which are taking place in this fastlane test. So BX is bundle exec. It's just a shortcut which I've used. So what's happening here is first it does a bundle install for Cocoa Pods and Fastlane itself. It then does a scan. It starts. No, I'm missing a step. Okay, yeah. It does the pod install, all the pods which have been updated, and then it starts scanning for the. So scan is the equal. So Fastlane has this quirky naming convention for its tools. So Fastlane scan actually does testing. Jim does your building. Well, quirky as you know. Pilot does release to test flight, and you had match for code signing and all that. So it's quirky in that way. All the tools you'd find it listed over here. So this is one of the builds I wanted to show. Oh yeah, I would show this instead. Yeah. So we have Fastlane configured on CircleCI. One reason we wanted to move to the command line was and away from Xcode completely relying on Xcode was we wanted to run automation builds on CircleCI on a CI system. To do that, we needed to first move to Fastlane. So that was done. We spinned up our environment. So on a CI system, what's happening is that and you always get a fresh machine to do your installation to build your app. We have configured on CircleCI using Fastlane that yeah, that's a long output. Yeah, so this is where scan runs in. So it's doing all the building for us before running the test. So Xcode does that for you automatically. You can run single test cases in Xcode. You have that benefit. You don't have that benefit with scan file, of course. But the thing is, you can run it across machines easily. You don't have to rely on someone's Xcode configuration to mess your building and running test cases. The other tools with Fastlane are Match, Cert, and Sci. So these two are alternates. Basically, if you are using, yeah. So if you are using Match, what it does is it stores all your private keys. So with the Match, the idea is to use one single account across your company. Match aggressively revokes your certificates before you start code signing and building. As a team, if you're just starting off with Fastlane, I would recommend just starting up building iOS apps. I would recommend start using Match directly because it would avoid a lot of headaches later on. If you have seen new people entering your team and then suddenly all the certificates are not valid or you're having issues with code signing, it takes all that pain away. Certain Sci is the alternative where you don't have to revoke your existing certificates and create new ones. You can reuse your existing certificates and do the build process in your local. So either Match or Certain Sci is just to get the certificates and the signing keys onto your local machine. So that Fastlane uses that during the build process to create your IP. Oh yeah, one thing with Fastlane. So to the keen-eyed observer, you would have seen that you can actually see the output of the. You can see the exact command which Fastlane runs. So Fastlane basically runs your Xcode build commands to create your IPAs and all that. So if you look here, so it's actually using Xcode build to create your IPA. So all this output is from this one command, this one huge command. You can break it down actually. So it's doing the Xcode build, runs the clean and the test. It uses the derived path, the platform, the scheme, and all that. So all the configuration is handled for you. You don't have to run it by hand. You only run fastlane scan, and it runs all those configuration and builds it for you. So I guess. So apart from match, cert, and SI, you have snapshot. Snapshot takes screenshots of your app before deploying to App Store. App Store, yeah, this is probably the only non-quirky command in the Fastlane chain. App Store builds the app and releases it to the App Store, as the name suggests. For more actions, you can obviously run Fastlane actions. Oh, cool! My build ran. So these are various actions which are there in Fastlane. So you have some Android specific ones. You won't need it if you're dealing only with iOS. You have plugins for cartridge, cert. Cert, as I mentioned, is the signing tool, or it's to fetch the certificates from iOS Apple Developer Portal to your local machine. You have Cocoa Pods integration, you have Crashlytics integration. So it provides a lot of nice integrations out of the box, like Diary and all that. So you don't have to necessarily rely on, or rather write your own integrations most of the cases. Like pretty much you can just Google search and find the integration you'd need. So I would let the yeah. So this is the upload to file test flight, the pilot thing, and so on and so forth. You have a lot of actions which you can do. Currently, in my machine, there are 213 actions configured. Um, yeah, so play around with Fastlane. That's it. I guess that's pretty much what I had for Fastlane. I would want to cover a few other things which were related to our build process. We have Crashlytics for beta releases. So what we had was on my iPhone, I just have this beta app from Crashlytics, and for the testers would have the same app. Whenever I write a new commit, my Circle CI and push it, my Circle CI would build the app and release it to Crashlytics. So that was the idea which we had come up with, which we wanted basically. So every new commit would generate a new release to the tester. So for the tester, it's like, hey, I don't have to come over and ask you for a build. It's like I start my day, I open the app, and I'm like, I have the fresh new release each and every day. Of course, you could do build tagging and all that. That's possible. So what we had instead was a way to control that was using version numbers. So either you provide a build number using the environment variable, or it manually upgrades the build number. So we had a simple idea that, hey, why not just use the current time.now. So the time at this instant as an integer would get updated as a build number. So it becomes easy to figure out when the build was released actually. So that's that. So Crashlytics done. Diary for sharing pre-release versions. So again, we had a Diary plugin installed to do the Diary build. So we just call from the command line bx fastlane there we build, there we upload, and it does it for us. So we have there we related configuration in our environment variable in our environment file. So it has a configuration which you would need the message, and it would just post it to Slack as well. Oh yeah, you have Slack integration as well, just fancy stuff. All right, moving on. So dealing with multiple environments. So like I said, our app deals, so it's a fairly complicated enterprise app with a lot of environments which we have on the server side. So we wanted to release in such a way that when we are testing on the dev version on locally, we are using one particular server. When we are releasing to production, we are using only the production URLs and nothing else. So for that, what we had was we configured an enum called environment, and the code is pretty self-explanatory. The div, it's like, hey, if it's production, use this production URL. If it's otherwise, just use this dev URL. So we are using for dev this dev URL for both develop and testing environments. The pubnub subkey, the pubnub pub and subkeys for all the environments are the same. Log levels on production and log levels on debug, and struct environment config. Okay, so this is where things. So now I have this enum, right? But when I'm starting the app or I'm building the app, how do I configure that? Hey, it's for this environment, right? So I pass that using the info plist. I just mark that, hey, there is this configuration variable which will take in a configuration value from the command line basically. So while I'm doing the gem build, you'd have seen that I pass in a configuration. So I pick from the iOS environment. Okay, I don't have a iOS environment configured. That's because I actually use the default configuration. So that's the develop configuration, which is going to be used on my local machine. So whenever we want a production release, you do something like oh yeah. So actually, I don't need to pass in the iOS environment over here because I've configured it to use the configuration production configuration by default on the release lane. This is my lane release. So I could cover more on the lanes and how to write them. They are pretty much like writing a Ruby function. Um, Ruby is very similar to Swift, or Swift was actually has a lot of influence from Ruby language. So if you're familiar with Swift, I think you'd find Ruby very simple. Testing. So we use quick and nimble for testing. I could show you a simple quick test. Oh yeah, I'm opening in Sublime because it's easier, it's faster. I generally use Xcode for my development. It just right now switching files on Xcode is painful. It's like it just takes a lot of time. All right, so I have this test case defined. I'll probably use a simpler test case. So this is the XC test case example which we had already. Okay, so I have XC test cases here, but I don't have a simple quick spec. So quick, if you're familiar with RSpec, then it's a BDT testing library. So you have your spec defined. I write a spec function which describes my function, which is in my source code inside the activity file, and it describes the test cases itself. So it should return ATAs for key ATAs. So when I'm running test cases, it actually gives me a nice little output to define. So, so activity spec get dependency key work order level activity should return at task for key at task. It's kind of readable, except if it didn't have all these underscores, it would look just like an English sentence. So my test cases become very readable, whereas with XC test it's just one single function and having. So one thing which I liked about BDD testing was you have setup and tear down methods called before and after, which you can define at a unit level. Like within a described block, you can define your setup and tear down. Whereas with XC test, you can't really define your. So you have your test case, but your setup and tear down is at a class level. You don't have it at a individual test level. Or for a number of test cases, you can't write a common setup and tear down. You basically have to call it in your test case. So there is that. Also, we are using Calabash Cucumber style test cases for complete end-to-end integration testing. All right. So last but not the least, Cocoa Pods and Cartridge. So I have a love-hate relationship with Cocoa Pods. I dislike the fact that it uses a centralized model where everything, so all packages in Cocoa Pods is defined within the Cocoa Pods spec repository in GitHub. If you have seen that, it's a monster repository. It has like, it's I think more than a GB or 2 GBs in size. If you are starting with Pod, you have a GB of download just to get started with Pod. With Carthage, I found that hey, you don't have any such common centralized dependency, centralized repository to deal with. You have individual packages released on GitHub. You are building that locally, and then they get linked statically to your app API, IP, rather than like Cocoa Pods, which dynamically links them, which actually builds. So with Cocoa Pods, you would have noticed that each of your pods actually get built when you do a clean build on Xcode. So all your pods get built each and every time you do a build. So if you're like me, you want to avoid all that overhead, switch to Carthage. You'd have a lot more faster build time, a lot more faster development time as well, because it just shaves at least 3 or 4 minutes of your time. So where are we, right? Testers be able to test the code as and when they want. Yes, using the beta app, we are releasing each and every commit to Crashlytics. Developers be able to quickly build and push an IPA, done. We actually don't even think about it. We just commit and it just gets built for us. Stable code base with good test coverage, that's kind of in progress. Minimum setup required for new developers. We need more new developers to come and test this hypothesis for us. We have a nice little README which gets you started. We just we just ask you to do these prerequisites and you can get started pretty much. So I think that's all I had. So you can reach me at Gaurav Agrawal R. The slides are up on GitHub pages. Questions? I know I blitzed through that entire talk, but that was the nature of the talk, I guess. questions?
Do you support distributed testing using that vehicle?
Distributed testing as in?
It's in running 2 or 3 test cases at the same time.
Oh, parallelly running your test cases, right?
Yes.
Honestly, our testing time is not, or the entire fastlane scan which I ran in front of you, most of the time is spent on the build process. The test cases, the individual test cases are not, they don't take a lot of time for us. So they take about like 100 milliseconds. So that's not the problem we actually want to solve. But coming to your question, no, Quick and Nimble do not run test cases in parallel. They run sequentially.
Let me, do you go for the API call or you just want that API data
Um,
for to run your test cases?
these are unit level tests. So we don't actually make the API calls.
You are not testing that API.
That's not the intention of these test cases. So for that we have Calabash. The idea is with Calabash we have a dedicated environment for the server side as well as a dedicated configuration on the project on the app side. So when we build that app and test against Calabash, it would only run those specific features and test against that server.
So there's a way to make bills from different branches, right? Or just one target, sorry, different targets.
Sure, you can. So if you have to build for different targets, all you have to do. So here I'm actually defining the target somewhere. I don't actually want to open up the. Okay, let me check. Okay, so if I remember correctly, you have a scheme which builds for a target. So you actually select the correct scheme which you want to build, and which in turn builds for the correct target which you are intending to build. So you'll have to define a new scheme in your Xcode, and then once you have that, you just pass in. So you can pass in with the environment variable gem scheme. Is it visible? So you have, so what I typed was describe me this action, basically fastlane action gem. So it gives me all the parameters, all the options which are there in gem. So it says that hey, you can pass in. So to build for different targets, you have already pre-configured your scheme. Now you can on the command line you can say bundle exec I just use because I installed fastlane with bundler, but you don't necessarily need to have it. So fastlane gem with the scheme, I could provide it using an environment variable or even by passing it inside the lane in the configuration. So something like this. So I'll have scheme and then the scheme name.
So these are all we need to write Ruby or will be there when we install the framework.
Fastlane does not come with an init script. Last I checked, so this was done a year back. I remember writing the entire Fastlane from scratch. What I did in turn was I referred to Wikipedia's Fastlane configuration. So they have their own iOS app. So Wikipedia has its own iOS app, so you can actually go through it. So they have a Fastlane configuration. It's up, open source. because well, it's Wikipedia. So I referred to this fast file when I was getting started. So I chose what made sense and modified a lot. So I don't think it resembles this at all right now, except probably these few things. So I have these punch, bump major, minor, patch, and set version number. All these remain the same. Most of the other stuff has changed a lot over the year. And I'm on a sabbatical, so I'm like not really actively looking at it anymore. So cool. Any other questions, or I'll just end the recording. All right, cool. Thank you.